Now we're going to take a look at this investment opportunity at 6097 Sherlock Road in Mid-Pines. So here's the listing. You can see a very well maintained home. We will just page through the photos here. So you can see the paint, the roof, everything looks great. Garage, concrete driveway. And then as we go ahead and take a look at the outside, so here you get a sense for some of the views. And then again, from the backside here, you've got this nice balcony off the primary bedroom and nice tall ceilings, wood burning stove, lots of windows letting the light in and helping you enjoy the views. You'll see that they've got it nicely decorated here, which will give you some inspiration for your own design. And actually there you saw a little peekaboo view of the pond. So that's right outside the patio. And then again, this does sit on top of a hill. We've got beautiful granite counters, nice oak cabinets, good shape, stainless appliances. And we'll just kind of go through. Here's a nice fully stocked pantry. And then again, lots of living area, bathrooms look good. This is an office, so in addition to the 3 bedrooms, there is this office space which can be used for sleeping. In Mariposa County, you are limited to 3 bedrooms max and 10 guests, but you can offer sleeping arrangements in rooms that are not bedrooms, if you will. So that gives you an opportunity to generate a bit more revenue with guest count, laundry area. This is the primary bedroom, so you see the stairway up here, and then that balcony that we saw from the other photo. So even better views from upstairs. So we'll just go ahead and page through the photos before we jump into the numbers. Garage is finished and looks good. And again, you get a sense for the outdoor space, the pond, the views, the wildlife, and the hot tub. So, this one is pretty well ready to go. And if you just take a look at the price point, at $825,000, it's not a crazy price given this is 30 acres. You've got this nice home on 30 acres, but that doesn't really represent the true investment potential of this property. So this property is zoned mountain home, and in Mariposa County, that means a minimum of 5 acres. But with 30 acres, we can comfortably subdivide this into 5 parcels. So now think about 5 plus acre lots. Each of those lots in Mariposa County can have 2 homes, and each home can be rented out on short-term rental. So Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, whatever you like. So basically you've got access with this property to develop it into a 10-unit community, if you will, with 10 individual units that can be rented out short-term. So what would we do with the land? Well, first of all, let's take a quick look at the lot. So you can see it's this section in the middle. You can see the house up in the corner. Lot extends all the way down to the road. And then what we would look at is, okay, what are the logical divisions of this property into 5 individual parcels? And then if you want to cost effectively build with units that are going to generate excellent returns, then I recommend tiny homes. So this is a builder that I know. This is JT Collective Tiny Homes. And Jacob, the owner, builds a beautiful house. And you'll notice that these right now are on wheels because that's how he started his business. But he is in the process of getting HUD certified so he can put these homes on a permanent foundation. And in that case, they would qualify for short-term rental in Mariposa County. So that would be my recommendation, is to put those on the property, again, the 5 lots. So you'd have a total of 9 new homes that you would be putting on this development. So let's take a look at the numbers. First of all, we take a look at the property itself at 6097 Sherlock Road. And again, what AirDNA does is you put in an address, you put in the bedrooms, the bathrooms, and the number of guests. And then it will look at nearby properties that are on the short-term rental platforms. It has the ability to go in the back door and get the revenue data for those properties. And then it will build a forecast for you. And in this case, it's projecting just under $70,000 for the main home. And again, some of these listings that it's comparing to are not as nice. Some might be nicer. The 68.7 is a good mean, but depending on what you do with the home, and again, with the amenities of the hot tub, which statistically adds about $10,000 to $20,000 in annual revenue in Mariposa County, it's possible that we could move this number up a bit. But let's take a look at the tiny homes. So I picked an example here. This is an active short-term rental in Oakhurst, nearby to Mariposa. It happens to be owned by a friend of mine, a client. And as you can see, they're generating right at $50,000 a year. But that's with only 257 days available. So they may be blocking it for friends or family or personal use. So what this revenue potential says is that if this was actually available for every day of the year, with this kind of occupancy rate, which is very, very strong, you could generate almost $70,000 a year. And that's kind of crazy. We're looking at a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that generates roughly the same revenue. But why is that? Well, basically, people want a unique experience. So this just gives you an idea of what can be done when you do something unique. So they've done a very nice outdoor space with a little cowboy pool and a hot tub. So they've really decked this out. So again, this will give you an idea of what can be done if you really develop each one of these homes. So now let's jump into the numbers. So this is a spreadsheet that I built, and using that $825,000 list price, the $68,700 AirDNA revenue, and then about $125,000 for each of the tiny homes. Again, Jacob might work with you and give you a bit of a discount, but again, you've got the amenities as well. So I think that's a good assumption for this exercise. Now, there are going to be costs associated with subdividing the property. I don't have a quote, but I think $25,000 is a good estimate. And then, of course, there needs to be some well and septic improvements for the entire development. So I put in $75,000 to cover well, septic, some water storage, and you'd have to basically do this strategically to make sure that you're getting the best value out of that investment. This is kind of a back of the envelope summary and analysis. This isn't the deep dive. We'd have to actually start to get some quotes and some hard numbers, but I just want to cast the vision for what's possible. So when we look at that $825,000 and the $68,700, that only gives us a gross yield of 8.3%. That's not too exciting. We're usually looking for a minimum of 15%, 20% ideally. But what happens is when you take the entire investment to develop all 10 units, the existing home plus the 9 tiny homes, and then with what I said was a fairly conservative estimate of $50,000 of a year in annual revenue for each one of those tiny homes, well, that gives us over $518,000 or a 25.3% gross yield. So when complete, this property could definitely deliver very, very good ROI. But there's something else I want to point out. So we looked at that listing at $825,000. Well, the reality is that this property listing, and this is the bad news is the listing expired. But the good news is they are still interested in selling. So I've reached out to the listing agent. The owners are planning on putting it back on the market. But before that listing expired, they actually dropped the price to $699,000. So that makes the numbers look pretty interesting. So what I wanted to do was look at, okay, what's the upside scenario? Let's say you can get the property for $699,000. Okay, now we're up to almost 10% gross yield just for the house. So for a lot of investors, that will meet their requirements. But now if we do the same kind of development, add the 9 tiny homes, do the subdivision, we end up with reducing our overall cost. So now it's $1.924 million instead of over $2 million. And what I did in this analysis, again, because I'm trying to show what is the upside. So if we take that projection for that existing tiny home that I showed you, and we look at its potential revenue based on being available all year, that's actually closer to the $65,000. So we dropped the price of the existing home down to $699,000. We upped the revenue on the tiny homes to $65,000, and now we are at $653,700 of annual revenue for the property and a 34% gross yield. So again, now this is gross yield, so you've got other expenses, like I said, hot tubs and landscaping improvements, probably some tree work. So, you're not going to get to that 34%, all in, but this will give you an idea of the revenue potential and the return on investment potential of this property. So I think it's an outstanding investment for the right investor. And like I said, while the listing is expired, the owners are working with the listing agents, and they would entertain an offer. They just don't want to be bothered by open houses and frequent showings. So if I can bring a well-qualified investor to the table with a proposal, I am sure that we can make this happen. So I would ask you to reach out. Let's have a conversation, and let's come up with a strategy to go after this home. Okay, I'm also going to include a video tour. It's actually a drone fly through the house and the property to give you a sense of the layout and kind of the quality of the views and the home. We will put that at the end of this video, but I also wanted to just point out one other thing. So this is in Mid-Pines. It's outside of Mariposa. It's actually between the town of Mariposa and Yosemite National Park. So it is a very good location. And there is a very interesting property in Mid-Pines. And I just want to show you this as kind of an example of what can be done, and again with unique stays. So this is something called Auto Camp. So this is a development in Mid-Pines, and what they've done is they've actually put Airstream trailers. So they've got Airstream trailers, a full range. I'm not sure exactly how many units they have. They've also got some common area. So you can see they've really turned it into a resort community. And again, that's not factored into the analysis that I did, but certainly this property would have this kind of potential. And Auto Camp is booked. It's booked solidly. It's doing very well. I mean, I think during the high season, they rent these Airstreams for about $500 a night. So they're just the classic Airstream. They actually buy a custom configuration, and I think they paid about $100,000 each for these Airstreams. Now you notice they have wheels, and I talked about putting the tiny homes on foundations to comply with the short-term rental regulations of Mariposa County. They have a special zoning and a conditional use permit that allows them to do rentals in Airstream trailers. So again, we'd have to take a little different approach and put homes on foundations, which qualifies under a different set of rules. But I think the principle applies. This glamping experience has great appeal, especially for visitors of Yosemite National Park. They tend to be very outdoor oriented, hikers, climbers, and I think the tiny homes, as we saw from our other example, can be very, very successful.